who's where and what should be done. We know a little bit. But oftentimes we don't have the whole picture of things. And when we don't have the whole picture, we can say, I'd like some mustard, please, with my foot, because it's in my mouth. And if I'm going to be putting my foot in my mouth, I might as well have some mustard or mayonnaise on it to at least make it a little more palatable. Pride starts to enter into that heart of Peter. And sometimes we think we know better than others, and we really don't. A lot of times, you're ignorant. One of the seminarians went in Rome, had his parents, and was showing them around the city, and they stopped in front of the Pantheon. And as they were there, and he was explaining things, Father Richard Foster, who was the Latin scholar and taught Latin over there from Wisconsin, a rather crusty old, he was a Carmelite also, rather crusty old man, was passing by and he hears this seminarian explaining the Pantheon. He says, and you see, this is one of the oldest temples in Rome. And even up there, the Latin that's on the front, it's so old we don't know what it says. Well, Father Reggie Foster could not let that go by as he was passing. So he pulled him aside. At least he was kind and charitable that way. He pulled him aside. He said, well, first he says, well, actually, it says, and he starts talking about, this was built in the third council of Marcus Agrippa, Lucius, son of it. And so he explains it. Then he pulls the boy aside. He says, son, don't inflict your ignorance upon others. And left it at that and passed away. Sometimes we inflict our ignorance upon others when we think we know. But Peter, he knew, but Jesus was going to have none of it. Christ has a way of reminding us that we don't know everything. And sometimes it stings, just as much as Christ's rebuke stung Peter. What did he say to Peter? Get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle to me. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do. Okay. The second person of the Trinity just called you Satan, the one who declared war on God. That certainly does not feel good, I don't think. Get behind me, Satan. He said, well, wait a minute, you said I'm going to be a rock. Now you say that I'm Satan. What is this identity change? There's like, multiple personalities going on. This flip-flop. Peter is likened to Satan's attempt in the desert to turn Jesus away from his purpose. Christ rebuked Satan in the desert to turn, but for Peter, the rebuke is different. Jesus rebuked Satan to go away. For Peter, that rebuke is to go behind. Get behind me. Not get away from me. Get behind me, Satan. Behind. There's a story. Family was going to Grand Isle. It was the first time a little girl was going to be going to Grand Isle, the great Cajun Riviera, with this beautiful cafe au lait water that you can't see your feet. When we go there, you have to make sure you had shoes on to go in water. You didn't know what you were stepping on when you went there. She had heard about Grand Isle. It was her first time going, and her older sister was saying, oh, you're going to love it. It's wonderful. The waves crash and all this stuff. And she was about 7, 8 years old. And so they're going there, and they arrive at the camp. You have a big sand dune, you have to go over and see it. She's like, Mom, can I go see the Gulf? I want to go see. She said, well, you have to unpack the car. No, I want to go see. She said, do not, I'm going to let you go, but do not go in the water. It's too dangerous. You can go see it, but do not. Now, if you feel tempted to go play in the water, say, Satan, get behind me. What do you say? Satan, get behind me. Okay. So, she went out. Everybody's unpacking the vehicle. About 10 minutes later, here she comes. Soaking wet. Mom is not happy. And she says, what did I tell you not to go? Yes, ma'am. Do not go in the water. It's not, you're coming in soaking. did you go in the water? I was in the water, yes, sir. What did I tell you to say? Say, get behind. Did you say that? Yes. Then why did you go in the water? Well, he pushed me in. Should have said, get away from me, Satan. Smart little girl, wonderful little girl. You might have taught some like this in your classes. They're now brain surgeons, probably. But get behind me, tells Peter. Follow me. Learn from me. It's interesting, he says this beginning to Peter, get behind me, follow me. He's also going to say this to him at the end. Follow me. We should never get ahead of Jesus. No matter how fast we drive, we should never get ahead of Jesus. It's always following, because he knows the way. Sometimes we think we know better. But to follow and learn. Learn because Christ has to fulfill his mission. And we learn from how he fulfills that mission. And it gives us that strength and courage to be able to fulfill our own missions as they change throughout our lives. Sometimes we think, well, now my mission is to pray, to sit. You've gone from active ministry to contemplative. I said, well, that's what he said. Well, I'm not a cloistered Carmelite. I shouldn't have to have this quiet prayer all the time. But no, life changes for us. And if we're following Christ, we will always understand our mission. Because he's not going to ask us to do something he himself has not done. He's not going to say, go off on your own. He's going to say, follow me. There's different parts of Jesus' mission that we take part in at various stages of our lives. And ultimately, for all of us, it leads to Calvary. Whether we're standing there looking at the cross, or whether we're there with him. But it doesn't stop there. Remember, it never stops at Good Friday. There's always Easter Sunday. But you can't have Easter Sunday without Good Friday. It's there. The various parts of the mission is to follow him. So here, remember, not only is Peter called Satan, but Jesus adds that Peter is a scandalon in Greek to him. That translates to an obstacle. But literally, Peter is one who causes sin or gives occasion for sin to Jesus. If you would say, a temptation, a scandalon. We get the word scandal from this Greek word, scandalon, an obstacle. Peter's insistence is scandalous to Jesus. Now, I would think it would take a lot to scandalize the Lord. But this is a scandal. Do we get a scandal by our words and actions? Sometimes we don't even think about it. Are we a source of sin or temptation by our example or our words, our deeds to others to get off away from their mission, from that calling? Have we pulled people away from the Lord's mission in their own lives? Because maybe we thought better. Or we able to walk with? Now, it could be worse. You might be thinking, now, how could it be worse than being called Satan and a scandalon? Well, it can be. This character. Not knowing what it means to declare Jesus the Messiah, the Christ, could put us in the same category as Judas. That's how it could be worse. Judas. No one wants that. No one wants to be called a Judas. Although we have those at church, those that leave Mass early, like right after communion, they do the Judas shuffle. They sneak out before Mass is over. Just like Judas left the Last Supper early. They sneak one out before that final, the Judas shuffle. When I was at St. Anthony in Bayou Black, small country church, about maybe 300 people in the church. One of my little sacristan, she would sit in the back and she'd count people. She'd get all the posts together, knowing how many people are there. And she said, Father, she says, that door squeaks, the main door says, I'm going to get Bubba to put some WD-40 on. I said, don't. I said, because I want to hear that door open during communion time. And usually when I hear that open, I'm giving communion and I just sort of step to the side and look. So that way those that are coming to communion see that I see that someone's escaping, doing their Judas shuffle. But no one wants to be called Judas. Why? He betrayed Jesus to the high priest and the Sanhedrin. We see here on Spy Wednesday when he goes to make the deal, goes to conclude that there's your 30 pieces of silver over here. Because, Judas probably thought, if I just hand him over to the chief priests and the elders, maybe they can talk sense into him. They explain what the Christ should do. Now, we sort of fall into that category every now and then when we forget that Jesus is the Christ, and he's the one who knows what's going on. When we fall into this category, it's when we tell Jesus how he should answer our prayers, or what he should do for us, what would be best for us, because we know better. And we might do this in our prayer. We take control and tell the Lord how we're going to pray, what we're going to pray about. Today, this is what I'm going to pray with. And the Lord's like, that's nice. What about this instead? He knows how to connect with us. But this is my routine. I sort of picked up on that word last night without being said. This is what I do. Now, for a lot of you that didn't want to do 7 o'clock morning prayer, it was a joy to see a lot of you there this morning. Because I think your desire to pray together was much greater than your desire to stick with your routine. And there are fruits that come from that. That is that response saying, oh, the Lord's kicking me out of bed early. He wants me there. Because we need to be there together. That desire that's there. This is like when we go to the doctor, because I know many of you are in your golden years, more like rusty years. You're in your rusty years, or golden years for the doctors because they get all the gold. But, going there and saying, Doc, I have a pain in my side over here, and I need you to take out my appendix. Well, that's nice, but let the doctor do the doctor's work. And she might say, well, no, I'm going to give you this pill that's going to give you less gas, because that's what it is. But we want to tell it, this is what you need to do. This is the medicine that I need. Rather than say, I need to trust that you know what you're doing, and you're going to do what's best for me. But we become little Judases when we tell the Lord, you don't know what you're doing. You're not doing this God thing right. So let me tell you how this works. It's going to be like this. This is what I need. But really, that's not. It's not. We oftentimes do all the talking in prayer. But it's having to sit and listen. Is prayer really a checklist for us? This is my routine. Or is it an encounter? That when we leave prayer, we should leave a bit changed. Because we've encountered the living God. Do we leave changed? Or do we say, good, did it, boom, I prayed. Prayer is a means to an end. Not necessarily an end in and of itself, but that bridge that links us to the Lord. And it's a conversation. Not just, I'm going to tell you everything and say, good, you got this, I'm going now. Sister Dennis, these wise sayings that you hear, she used to tell us, she says, the Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you speak. Now, she also would want us to, she'd try to get us to sing at Edie White when it was Mass time. Guys, they're not going to sing in front of other guys. Girls, they might sing. And she used to get up there and she would say, you need to sing. Sing to the Lord, to give him thanks and praise. If you have a beautiful voice, sing to give him praise, To thank Him for the beautiful voice He gave you. If you have a horrible voice, sing even louder just to remind Him that He gave you a bad voice. Wisdom that comes with that. These sayings that we remember. But again, we should listen twice as much as we speak in prayer. Archbishop Fulton Sheen, in his holy hour, he would say 20 minutes of active praying, 40 minutes of resting and listening in prayer. 20-40 method, twice as much. See, pride is that vice. Oh, it's that horrible vice. The virtue that counters it, humility. St. Peter had to be humble at that moment. Really, that word humility, humus, the earth. Peter had to be brought back to earth, be grounded. Not so much the rock, because rocks are found on the ground, not in the air. Only attached to stuff that's connected to the ground. But it had to be grounded. Christ is our example. Think about it. The Creator is beaten with blows and scourges and led to the cross by His creatures. I recommend for us, depending on how bad pride is in our lives, that daily prayer of the Litany of Humility, according to Mary Del Val's Litany of Humility. For a prideful person, this is a nasty prayer. That's why I don't pray that too much. Now, when I was at the seminary in Rome, and I was hearing confessions of seminarians, that was a favorite penance of mine to give. The Litany of Humility. According to Mary, it's a wonderful litany. It's horrible, but it's wonderful. It rubs the wrong way for the prideful person. It's like sand in the bathing suit. Or we could say it's like sand in an oyster. Eventually you get a pearl from that irritation. Perhaps it's best maybe to pray just a line or two each day. Perhaps it's the same one for a week or so, just to remind us. One of these will hit us pretty hard. From the desire of being loved, delivered, being extolled, honored, praised, being preferred, being consulted, being approved, being considered. That desire for this, but also what stops us is fear. Fear of being humble. Because I think sometimes we equate being humbled with being humiliated. God doesn't humiliate. That's uncharitable. We may feel humiliated, but being humble, being brought low, being connected. And true humility means we know our strengths and our weaknesses. We know both. Fear of being despised by others or rebuked, calumniated, forgotten. That's a fear for a lot. Forgotten. I think especially as we get older, fear of being forgotten. Especially in a religious community, the family members, usually far away from us. Do they remember us? And sometimes that, the enemy loves to whisper these sweet nothings in our ears. We can start to be tempted by thinking that, saying, my other sisters have forgotten about me. They don't care. I'm forgotten. I fear of being forgotten. But we're never forgotten by God. If we were forgotten by God, we don't exist anymore. We're always remembered. That even when we feel like we are alone, He's always there with us. We can't forget that. The enemy's going to try and separate us. Growing up watching National Geographic episodes, there's always that one gazelle the lion saw, the lead one. It would try and separate it from the herd. And once separated, that was it. You knew it was going to chase it down, and it had supper for that night. Being forgotten, being separated and isolated. We're not. We're afraid of that. Being ridiculed, being wrong, being suspected. So it's keep me from these, deliver me from these, but also desiring for others desiring that others might be loved more than I, that others may be esteemed more than I. We're afraid, though, that if we desire this, that we're not going to have it. Think of the Easter Vigil, that Paschal candle. We take the light from it. It never grows dimmer. And it's spread and shared. It's still that same bright light. That others may grow in the opinion of the world and I diminish. Don't we say that about the Lord? That he might increase, I might decrease. John the Baptist, great figure of humility. So if we have issues with our pride, ask for St. John the Baptist's intercession. That others may be chosen, I set aside. That others may be praised and I unnoticed. That others may be preferred to me in everything. That others may be more holy than I, provided that I am holy as I can be. A wonderful litany. Horrible if we're prideful. Great songs. But perhaps it is something that helps us in our own prayer to enter into it. So, we think too much of things pertaining to human beings rather than pertaining to God. You know, how often do we give into self-indulgence, self-pity, self-gratification, rather than self-denial? In this gospel passage, Jesus commands, whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. If we do not do this as a follower of Christ, as sisters, as priests, we will lose our life, we will disfigure our vocation, and even lose our own vocation. Sometimes it becomes harder to see the image of our vocation. Like the apostles' first call, we see calling James and John. We perhaps think back when we received that invitation of Christ to enter into religious life. He often reveals to us an image of religious life, that little bait that we take. We go in, we enter into it. Perhaps saw yourself as a sister, perhaps wearing a habit, perhaps making your profession, receiving your mission, teaching young children, caring for the sick, performing some act of ministry. You said yes. You applied to the order. They took you in. You entered into formation, and you lost that image that you had going in. It goes away, and then we might start to think, maybe I made a mistake. Doubt enters in. We start to question our calling. Was it from God or was it from me? Did I want this? Did God want this? Who wanted this? Did we both want this? None of us want this? Have we ever thought that that image was taken away from us for a reason? Why can't I see myself as a sister? Perhaps it was so that we don't try to shape ourselves into that image. We'll only disfigure ourselves and come out far from that original image that we saw in that invitation. The formation you received, the experiences during your time in the convent, your missions, these have shaped and molded you into that completed image of the sister that you received at your calling. It's like the transfiguration. Think about it this way. The apostles, they're present for this revelation of the glory of the Lord as he would be revealed after his resurrection. They received that glimpse of what was to come after the horrors of his suffering and death. That they would see his glory again in the resurrection, his completed transformation. And the Lord perhaps gave you that glimpse of your transformed image. How close is that image now than what you saw when you went in to the convent? You know, it's like Michelangelo and the Pietà, that beautiful statue, the sculpture. You know, he sees the Pietà in his mind, but opening his mind, he has a block of marble in front of him. And he said, the sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. we were all blocks of marble when we started our formation. And yes, sometimes we were blockheads. Or têteux if you're from Louisiana. The Lord has called you to religious life and has been with you and within you. The Lord, the religious community, your missions, they had to chisel away that superfluous material. There's still maybe a little bit left. But you're coming out really, when I look out there, at the Pietà, a beautiful work that God has done over the years. He's taken with loving hands and sculpted and molded. And sometimes, yes, when we think about chiseling is a violent process. It's like pruning, cutting. But yet, the beauty that comes from that. You know, for some of us, maybe there's a little more superfluous material than others. Now, I'm not talking about any kind of a physical mass, but that character chiseled away. So we are Simons. We are Simons who have heard God calling us, inviting us to leave our nets and to follow Him. In doing so, we're given a period of formation, learning, and becoming. You've had this. Now it's living it out. You know, you began as a novice, but the identity of a novice was intimately connected with the identity of the sister, the professed sister. And the identity of that professed sister is intimately connected to Christ, the bridegroom. It's a gradual molding and shaping, a marathon, not a sprint. But ultimately, the image of you and your vocation is hidden within. What is that image? Who have you been called to be? The question comes up again. Who do you say that I am? But this time, enter into prayer, and this time you, not Christ, are the one asking. The prayer asks the Lord to reveal to you as He sees you. Who is it that He created? Who are you to Him? Ask Him, Jesus, you have asked me to answer the question, who do you say that I am? And I have given you that answer. Now I ask you, who do you say that I am? I say, fair is fair. He's going to ask us to answer that question about Him. He should be able to answer that question about us. At some point in our lives, we have to ask, Jesus, who do you say that I am? And perhaps we hesitate to ask that out of fear of what we might hear in prayer. You might be thinking, the last time I really listened, I ended up in this vocation. Or we might feel we have no need to listen. Well, God wanted me to be a sister, so I don't have to listen anymore. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm a sister. That's it. Well, you are called to be a sister long form. Then what type of sister has He called you to be over the years? Because you're not done yet. Till you take your last breath, then you're done. What kind of sister have you been over the years? This is where you get to take that prayer and go back. Go back throughout the years and see how you've grown. That where you were when you first entered the convent is hopefully not where you're at now. How has the Lord been good to you and shown you really the beauty of your own life? One of the questions that we're afraid of is, that keeps us from asking that question is, what if He wants me to change? What if He wants me to change at this stage in my life? What does He want me to change? And if I'm too set in my ways, how can I change? But perhaps the greatest fear that keeps us from asking that question, Lord, who do you say that I am? We're afraid to hear really how much Jesus loves us. That's hard for us to take because we know who we are and how we've lived out our lives. How much He loves us, that's sometimes the hardest. It isn't this time of introspection, looking at ourselves by ourselves. That's just spiritual navel gazing. Instead, it's time for reflection, looking at ourselves before a loving God. This isn't going to the fun house and looking at ourselves in a fun house mirror that misshapes us. That's not our real selves. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not so funny. But this instead is when we're able to hear the truth that the Lord holds up this mirror of charity that shows us who we truly are before Him. And so, allow this silence of this day to help hear the Lord say who you are. Just as Simon heard his name to be Peter, what is the Lord calling you? What is that name He has given you? Who you are? How does He describe you? Who do you say Jesus is? Who does Jesus say you are? Let Him reveal to you whom He loves greatly, the woman that He has called to follow Him. Let Him reveal to you that love, that mercy. And really, when you see who you are, it's what St. Catherine says. Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire. So this day gives an opportunity to reflect, to go back in time. These questions, to go back to that initial calling, those important moments in your own formation, those moments that shaped you, the people who shaped you, good and bad. Pray with that question. Who do you say that I am? Who are you as a sister of Mount Carmel? How has that understanding of religious life changed over the years? And these are the questions in your booklet. How is prayer in your life? That encounter with Him? Looking at your own strengths as in character. Those obstacles. We become an obstacle. And how do you think others see you in the community? You say, who do you say that I am? What would other sisters say? Say, well, describe this sister. And so, taking this time today to really listen to the Lord. Let Him reveal to you the great love that He has had and continues to have for you. So may the Lord grant you many graces today. May you rest with Him this day, walk with Him this day, sit with Him this day, and truly just be with Him this day. Amen. Any parish announcements, Sister Sheila? Any parish announcements? No announcements for the sisters?
Thank you.
We'll see you all for that.